Hi everyone, you're very welcome to today's press conference to discuss the FAI Facilities Investment Vision and Strategy. Here with us today we have Jonathan Hill, CEO of the FAI, and we have Will Barrett, Chairman of the Board of the FAI. We'll run a live section and for about 15 minutes, and then we'll run an embargo session for another 15 minutes. Some days will be in a separate room. To kick the press briefing off, Jonathan is going to make a short opening address.
Thank you, Louise, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, and thank you very much for being here. So we are delighted to officially launch our Facility Investment Vision and Strategy today. I look forward to discussing it with you in the course of today and indeed beyond. So I'm going to start with a short overview of the strategy rather than going through the detailed plan that all of you have had access to since early this morning. And then following that, Roy and I, the FAI Board Chair, are happy to take questions you may have on the strategy. So, first of all, some context. Football is the #1 participation sport in Ireland, and we believe offers a unique force for good and impacts Irish society at all levels. In terms of social return on investment, football's contribution across social, economic and health is significant, with the total current impact of participation in football estimated by UEFA at €1.8 billion. Football also reflects what is a changing Ireland. Our population is growing, is young and is becoming increasingly diverse. And football, as the global game, has a key role to play as we embrace this changing population dynamic. The landscape for football has also changed considerably in recent years, when you consider, for example, the impact of Brexit alone, which has resulted in more and more players staying within the domestic academy system. And this landscape has been further altered when you consider the exponential rise in popularity of women's and girls' football, which we believe represents a huge opportunity for Irish football, and it's an opportunity that everyone at the association wants to fully embrace. But we do, of course, face many challenges, but these are challenges we want to proactively address, and facilities, we believe, lie at the heart of real change. So over the past year, the FAI has conducted extensive research in order to accurately quantify the challenge facing Irish football with respect to facilities, with research focusing on an in-depth facilities audit, quantitative research amongst grassroots clubs, and a detailed analysis of European benchmarks. Our research clearly demonstrates that Irish football needs funding, both private and public, to transform our facilities and infrastructure and to inspire current and future generations. We believe that football has been underinvested in for the last 25 years and that we've fallen behind our European counterparts in facilities investment. This isn't the fault of any single entity, but it is a simple fact. That is evidenced by the stark findings from our facilities audit. So, for example, at grassroots level, many clubs do not have any form of community-focused clubhouse, and only 10% of our grassroots clubs have access to an indoor hall, for example. As a further example, take women's and girls' football, which has grown steadily in recent years. The reality is that this will suffer if we do not invest in facilities now, as we'll not be able to cater for this ongoing demand and growth. Again, as an example from the survey, we now know that 38% of our grassroots clubs do not offer female toilet facilities. Whilst the League of Ireland is currently thriving with sold-out stadia and an increasingly strong on-field product, the state of our facility infrastructure is clearly holding the league back. Facilities are below standard both in terms of our academies and wider training facilities, whilst many of our stadia have not seen significant investment for over 20 years. At international level, the FAI does not have a modern, fit-for-purpose national football centre facility, with the current FAI National Training Centre not at comparable standards to facilities in other European associations. In our current facility, there are no changing room for players across 18 international teams, or indeed for any of our young local players, for our match officials or staff. No high performance, no medical and no modern sports science facilities. We believe this needs to be addressed. So what is the opportunity? Well, we believe we have the opportunity to take decisive action now and create a modern and fit-for-purpose football infrastructure, and in doing so transform football in the country forever. Our goal is to realise football's full potential within our communities, deliver a new future for our League of Ireland, and inspire future generations by creating the environment to support and produce competitive and successful international teams. As the governing body of football in Ireland, we have a responsibility to create the very best environment to enable football to flourish, and in doing so, to also support the interests of Irish society and the Irish economy beyond. Football's potential for growth is real and significant, and we believe we have the opportunity to create a vibrant and sustainable industry around football in Ireland moving forward. So to the strategy itself. As you know, facility development is the number one objective of 6 core pillars developed by the FAI in our strategic plan of 2022 through to the end of 2025. And indeed, it underpins all of the other 5 core objectives. This facility investment vision and strategy analyses the facilities and infrastructure needs of Irish football. It's been developed to ensure that football is set up for success and can cater for the needs of future generations at all levels, from grassroots to elite. The plan outlines proposed total investment of €863 million over a 15-year period, split into 3 distinct 5-year phases, with investment focusing on the 3 core areas of the association, namely grassroots, the League of Ireland and international, and with proposed funding from both public and private sources, also from within football and from those wanting to support Irish football. At grassroots level, proposed investment focuses on new pitches, upgrades to existing pitches, new and upgraded clubhouses, and more community-focused facilities. The FAI Grassroots Club Mart scheme will be at the heart of these changes, with every club needing to have the Club Mart by the end of 2025. And this will sit alongside 8 new FAI grassroots regions with up to 4 satellite community club hubs in each region. For the League of Ireland, we have outlined the investment we believe is necessary into our League of Ireland club academies and their wider training facilities, and of course our League of Ireland stadia, in order to deliver a sustainable and growing league that serves the needs of communities and football in every region. And at international level, investment focuses on the development of that National Football Centre, inclusive of all of those high quality standard facilities that I've just mentioned. How will we deliver this? Well, we've outlined a clear, evidence-based approach for investment, exploring all avenues of funding across various government funds, local authorities, UEFA and FIFA, as well as the FAI and private investment. And as I say, we've also set out how our strategy will be delivered through a phased approach over those 3 5-year periods. This will be supported by the proposed establishment of an Ireland Football Facility Fund, ensuring an independent, consistent, professional and dedicated focus on facilities transformation is maintained. We recognise that all sports will have their own funding requirements, and we're happy to be part of an overall funding solution. We believe our strategy aligns with this, but we've set out a modern approach to delivering facilities for football for a new era. Community-focused planning, catering for multiple clubs and sports. So why should we believe and support the plan? Well, I believe that the FAI is now in a much stronger position and is a very different organisation from just 2 years ago, with highly skilled and experienced people working across the association, including a number of new additions to our leadership team, all complementing the excellent wider staff base within the association as a whole. Supported by our board and that fantastic staff, we believe we have a team in place which is committed to transforming Irish football and has the capability and experience so to do. But this is not just the FAI strategy, it is a strategy for Irish football and for wider Irish society. It embraces all parts of the game and, if supported, will ensure the following. So across grassroots, that every girl and boy will have access to proper basic facilities, and that every coach and volunteer will be equipped with the basic requirements to deliver a positive experience for all of our participants, so that football can deliver for communities across Ireland and can cater for that growing and increasingly diverse population. For the League of Ireland, we hope we will realise its great potential across both men's and women's teams, driven by increased attendances, the attraction of new fans, new sponsors and new broadcast partners, increased revenues and improve talent development in a post-Brexit environment. And that will create a real and sustainable industry around football in Ireland. For our international teams, we want as a country to be set up for success at international level across both men and women, with that first-class national football centre recognising and acknowledging the talent and potential of our best players. So in short, and to conclude, the vision is as follows. To create infrastructure and facilities that enable Ireland's #1 participation sport to thrive and deliver a truly transformational impact for Irish football and Irish society. To deliver a proper infrastructure at a time when Irish football is really beginning to thrive, as witnessed by the recent success of our underage teams, the momentum around the League of Ireland generally, and of course our senior women's team ahead of their first ever Women's World Cup. All of this has been achieved despite the challenges we face with respect to facilities, and not because of the facilities we currently have. We need that investment in facilities that will enable growth, not just at grassroots level, but across the League of Ireland, but also to foster excellence at our elite international level. I trust that everyone today is excited as I am in relation to just how good Irish football can be, particularly with the right facilities. So we look forward to discussing this strategy with you in more detail, and indeed with all of our key stakeholders moving forward. This is the start of the discussion and the debate. So thank you to you, but a final but important thanks to all of the staff here at the Association and all of our Irish football community who helped us in the creation of this strategy and plan. Thank you.
Great, okay. And we'll now kick off the live section. Gav.
Congratulations on the publication of such a big piece of work. Are you going to get them right? Are you confident about that?
Well, first of all, thank you for your thanks. We do think that it's a good, strong document, and we've taken a lot of time to get to this point. As I said in my opening address, it's informed by the reality of our current situation. So we think that the ask has been presented in the right way. Will we get the money? Well, that's the reason why we've put the plan together, the vision together, and the strategy. We've started discussions already with the Department of Sport and with Sport Ireland. They have been very positive. They are supportive of any proposal that brings that wider debate of funding to sport to the table. And I believe, as we've witnessed in the recent past, particularly in relation to the pandemic, that wider government understands the role that sport and football can play within Irish society, and yes, we believe we've got a strong case for Irish football and for facility transformation, and I think it's my role as CEO to put that case forward.
Yeah, I think I suppose any government funding for anything, but particularly sport, is always kind of going to be emotional, and people will have an emotive view, whatever sport they're from. What we've sought to do, and the team have sought to do over the last 18 months or so, since we've been putting this document together and all parts and components of it, is really take the emotion out of it and actually say, okay, at a point in time, everybody has a view that the facilities are poor, for whatever aspect of the game. Our role has been to do an audit of those to see where we are, how far the deficit is in terms of the existing facilities, and against the backdrop of a rising population over the next 15-20 years, which is forecast to be 20% plus or so, against a backdrop where we have a very young population, like 26% of our population are less than 20. And against all those things, we have a sport which has been chronically underinvested for a long period of time. If that underinvestment continues, we're going to have all sorts of problems given the growth in the sport, the relative size of the sport, and the demographics, and the change in the demographics would indicate that the demand for football and football facilities is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So against that backdrop, are we confident that we will get funding? I'm certainly confident that we should get funding, and I think part of the report also, we're not in isolation. Like, we're a sport of many sports, and I suppose part of our argument is to say, okay, well, what's happened over the last 20 years, and over the last 20 years as a country we've underspent in sport. Okay, we're about half of what other countries have done, and we're down at the bottom tier of countries which have invested in sports as a whole. Our argument would be there should be more investment in sport given the demographics, and as the largest sport we have the greatest need, and that's historical, but also what we see into the future. So we think we should get the funding, and we think we've got a good case to argue that we will get the funding.
To what extent are the forecasted numbers in this document informed by what's realistic that you may get from governments? How much of it is guided by simply what's needed, regardless of how much money might be
maybe Jonathan may answer this one, but I'll say in that we kind of again just divorce ourselves from what or where it could come from. The unalterable facts are that we have a deficit in facilities now. That's just going to get greater, and to bridge the gap, to bring the facilities up to what we believe are just adequate. That's the base of the numbers.
John, people will read about this and watch on the news bulletins and say, well, the taxpayer bailed the FAI out only a couple of years ago because of the previous financial mismanagement, and now they're asking us for €1 million. Why do they deserve it? What's your response to those reservations?
No, sure, no, and I understand the thrust of the question. Look, I do believe that the FAI is in a very different place than it was 2 years ago, and we're coming to the end of a period whereby the memorandum of understanding that we signed with the government that led to that very necessary and much appreciated investment back in 2019-2020 is coming to an end, and as part of that there were 163 governance and finance recommendations that we were asked to bring into the association, and by the end of 2023 we will have achieved all of those recommendations. So the association itself is in a very different place than it was, and what happened prior to 2019 will never happen again. It's a really important point to make. So we think we're well set up in relation to the general running of the FAI, but there is a separation between that general day-to-day running and the grant process that all sports look to in relation to the day-to-day running of the FAI and capital expenditure. So this is a different ask, if you like, in relation to government. And as I say, we believe that we've set out the rationale for the ask in a very cogent way. And we've stated what we believe that infrastructural deficit is, if you like, and this is a new debate and conversation that we're going to have with government.
There's a part of, in fairness to Jonathan, Louise, David, the management team, myself, the board, can't really to attest what happened over the last generation or the last management infrastructures. All we do know that is it kind of imploded in 2019, 2020. At the time, I absolutely believe it was the right thing for the government to step in and stabilise the organisation. They've placed a lot of trust in the board and the management to try and do that and try and help the game grow against a backdrop where they absolutely recognised the relative importance of football in this country and what it could be. So there's an element where government stepped in and helped there. But then if you look over the last 20 years and however things were managed or whatever the perceptions were, the reality is as a sport, as a leading sport, football was grossly underinvested in against the other the main sports. So that's just the reality of it. So on the one hand, yeah, we ask on behalf of the football community and all who play in it, that here's a plan, and this is what it would take to give people the necessary facilities for them against a backdrop where for a generation there hasn't been sufficient investment in football relative to any other leading sport. Those are the facts.
You seem to be saying that you're happy with the governance of the association now. Is that a fair point? This new Ireland football facility fund that you're proposing, why does that have to be independent?
Well, look, we feel that an independent body will bring a consistent and professional approach to the delivery of this wider and very ambitious plan. So we think that there is a logic to have, and we're already planning to have a CEO in place of said fund to be able to give that focus in the delivery of everything that we're looking at. There is precedent for this. There's precedent for this in relation to, in the UK, a football foundation. And we think that it's a sensible way to continue to have, if you like, that separation in relation to the general funding that I've just spoken to in relation to the Sport Island grant approach into the FAI. We will carry on and continue to do what we're trying to do at the moment in relation to reduce debt. And I'm pleased to say that we have reduced debt down to, and we'll be talking to this at the AGM in September, but we reduced our debt down to 44 million euros, which is a significant jump down from the 63.5 million euros that I inherited when we came in. But we will continue separately to continue on doing all of those things as well as we can do, so that we can get to a point whereby we have reserves whereby we can also support this overall strategy. But the idea and the concept, which we're going to talk with stakeholders about, is to have a separate independent board that will include representatives from each of those stakeholders to be part of the allocation of any funds that do come into the fund. So we're comfortable with it as a concept, but as I say, it's one that we've started to discuss with government, and will continue to evolve over the coming months.
Report says as well that you'd be working with other sports to maximise the benefits as maybe as possible. Have you spoken before approaching the report to the GAA, for example, or the IRFB?
Well, we've spoken with Sport Island, and that fits with their overall strategy as well in relation to having more, particularly at grassroots level, municipal, multi-club and multi-sport facilities. And they're happy to hear that we are committed to that approach as well. We've concentrated on our own strategy, if you like, and our own plan, but I have spoken to a number of CEOs in some of the other sports in relation to their being integrated into, for example, grassroots facilities in relation to, say, indoor halls, so the likes of basketball and others. We hope that we're taking a grown-up and mature approach to that, and think that it is a sensible way of looking at facilities, particularly in those, say, those smaller towns where it probably doesn't make sense for there to be 2 or 3 new stadia being built. So we're open to all of those conversations.
And what can I ask you about when it came about regarding the sharing of the betting tax? The approach was criticised a number of people, saying that you shouldn't really be criticising another sport in terms of trying to get money for your own sport. Is that a part of this plan?
So I suppose we haven't been critical of any sport, actually, you know. So, and you know what, and just like this document, you know, when you try to look at a particular issue, we try to, you know, in terms of, you know, the amount of work that's gone into this document. When we look at something like the betting tax, is that we try to take a fact-based approach to a funding stream that has been there for the last 22 years or so for 2 other sports. Okay, and rather than being emotive about it, is actually say, okay, well, let's look at this and let's look what has happened and why it happened. So the reality is, for those 2 sports, there's been 1.6 billion put into those sports as investment. The original genesis of it was the betting tax. The reason the betting tax was put in place was this concept of a free rider, i.e. Betting companies were benefiting off the content of horse and dog racing, and that this new fund and the betting levy was directed to those two sports to compensate for the fact that all the bets were being placed, let's say, theoretically on horse and dog racing at that time. So that's fine. So what's happened though over the last 20 odd years is that the betting levy and the funds raised has just increased at a time when the proportion of those bets has changed, and close to 40% of them come from football. So I think it's an absolutely reasonable question to ask, is that if the original basis of the legislation was one thing, that if you apply it today, then football and other sports should benefit from it. But we haven't criticised other sports, and actually, if you look at our report, what we do say is that, well, listen, this has been here for 20 odd years. It is what it is. So what we would suggest is just increase the betting levy from 2% to 3%, and then in doing that, other sports, including football, could benefit from the increased yield from betting levies. So it's no, we're not trying to say, pit ourselves against other sports or say that we should be taking off them. That's not what we said. That's not what the report says. And what it says is, we've got a low betting levy, increase it, other sports can benefit, and then when I look at it from a football perspective, that would be and would represent a significant amount of permanent funding for the game, which would help finance part of what we're trying to do here. So, and part of the reason as to why we looked at that in particular was, it's one thing saying we need loads of money, okay, and we need loads of money to invest in the game. Well, that may be fine, but come up with some sensible suggestions as to how that can be raised. That's one.
And if I could just add to that, I mean, first of all, it was an independent report that we asked that we had a better understanding of the levy itself. I personally see the levy situation as being a good example of government actually delivering a stimulus to a sport and not seeing it as a subsidy. And I see that as a great example of what could happen in relation to football. I see no reason why. And I'm not looking at one particular revenue stream, and our report talks to a number and not just in relation to the levy. But I do see the opportunity for the government to replicate, in fact, what it's done for horse racing, which is clearly a very successful sport and industry now, and for the same to happen for football moving forward.
In relation to the additional corporate tax revenue that was collected this year, do you think that football should be able to get a slice of that?
So there are significant surpluses, and there will be next year. Government will decide as to how they're going to spend those. It makes sense in any economy when you have surpluses like that, to spend a chunk of it in improving infrastructure. And we have lots of needs as a society. We have a housing crisis. We have housing needs. We have infrastructure deficits. Yes, it should be spent on those, but we also have a sporting infrastructure deficit. And yeah, I do believe that putting money into facilities now, be they football or other facilities, to cater for the current needs and for the growing needs that are going to be there over the next 20 years, that's a prudent thing to do. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, just to go back to the levy thing, what you say makes sense and all that, but on Taoiseach 𝗣𝗥𝗘𝗦𝗦 stood up in Dáil a couple of weeks ago and said the opposite. He said that this is an attempt to pit the question industry against sport.
Okay. Yeah.
So what? How do you, where's the breakdown in communication there? Because you're taking so much money.
Well, listen, I haven't communicated with the Taoiseach on it, so but all I can say is that we commissioned a report. The basic conclusion of that report was that there's a couple of options, and the preferred and most reasonable option is not to take away from existing sports, because there's clearly dependence on it, but to increase the yield from the levy. So increase the levy, and in doing that, you know, is it going to put the betting levy at odds with, you know, what it should be relative to VAT or whatever the case may be? No, it doesn't. So it just seems that seems to us a sensible, reasonable thing to do. But we're not having a look or having a go at horse racing, greyhound racing, or anything else. Quite the opposite. It's actually there's a mechanism there to fund more things.
Yeah, I wrote about exactly what you said there a couple of weeks ago, and there were smaller bookmakers around to me saying, we'll go out of business if they increase the betting levy. So
Well,
there's cause and effect to everything here.
Well, maybe, I don't know, but I think that's been a constant refrain every time there's been a change in the betting levy, and I see, you know, Horse Racing Ireland and others are actually calling for an increase in the levy as well. You know, so I don't believe that issue should dwarf the significant benefits that can accrue to society more generally if increased yields from betting and gambling are put to a proper use and good use, which we would say in this context is more facilities for more sports, which would benefit more people.